Sage here for Kalkine Media. Please subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon to be notified of the latest videos. Thanks for joining us for this trending news topic. The business of podcasting. How do podcasters rake in the revenue? Well, podcasting is the fastest growing medium for ad revenue, but despite this, that revenue remains relatively small compared to other mediums. And being a relatively new medium compared with radio, it seems the podcast industry still hasn't quite found a way to cash in on its listeners completely. According to Edison Research, the industry as a whole brings in less than $1 billion annually, despite 90 million people consuming podcasts monthly. As such, it has yet to fully realise its economic potential. So what's the deal with podcasting? Currently, the returns seen from the entire podcast industry are achieved by the top 1% of the podcasts. According to Libsyn Research in 2019, 1% of podcasts made about $35,000 per episode, with the top 2% making approximately $20,000 per episode. After that, the numbers flail off quickly, with the average per episode returning just $124. One of the issues with podcasting is its sharing ability. While podcasting has been around for almost the same time as some social media platforms, the medium has yet to achieve the viral potential that platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok experience on a regular basis. If someone uploads a video of a dog on a skateboard on TikTok, that clip can be shared worldwide within hours. However, even the most popular podcasts can't achieve this viral shareability. Head of marketing at podcast hosting website Buzzsprout, Alban Brook, said recently on an episode of the Smart Passive Income podcast that podcasts are regularly found through word of mouth rather than file sharing on social networking platforms, and this is mainly due to the nature of the medium. A podcast is usually an extended format, with some podcasts lasting up to 3 or even 4 hours per episode. Unlike videos on YouTube that can be recommended to users via an algorithm, podcasting has no established platform where it can benefit from the use of algorithms. The big players make the big bucks. As the podcast world has developed through the years, it's gone from a do-it-yourself medium to a network medium. And much like the movie business, where the top studios like Disney, Netflix, and Warner Brothers account for the largest revenues, big podcasting networks have slowly evolved in the digital world to host the world's biggest podcasts, and therefore they enjoy the vast majority of the revenue. A podcast network is basically a company that produces and releases a collection of podcasts under its banner. For example, WNYC, one of the larger podcast networks, hosts some of the most listened to and most critically acclaimed podcasts in the world, with their stable consisting of the popular Radiolab, Death, Sex and Money, and Two Dope Queens. They are like the HBO of podcasting. There are just a small number of these networks, and yet they rake in the vast majority of the industry's revenue. How do the podcasts make money? Advertising. The first and the most obvious method of monetization for podcasts is advertising, and the money spent by advertisers in the podcasting medium has been increasing sharply since the beginning of podcasting. In 2018, brands spent $479 million advertising in the podcast landscape, and this figure was up 53% from the previous year. And despite 2020 being ravished by the COVID-19 pandemic, podcasts went from strength to strength, with total ad revenue in the US alone climbing to $842 million US, up from $708 million US in the previous year. And the most popular method of advertising is what's known as direct-to-brand, which considers the podcast demographics and lines it up with the product they wish to sell. And this method is achieved through pre-roll, mid-roll, and post-roll ads, usually read by the podcast host. One of the fastest advertising alternatives is called programmatic advertising, and these are ads which appear in the middle of the podcast, which is non-host read. Subscription-based podcasts. Apart from advertising, there are subscription-based podcasts, and this is where the podcast is put behind a paywall, which is only available to paying subscribers, and these types of podcasts are usually ad-free. Spotify is an excellent example that offers a subscription-based service, although audiences also have an option to consume the podcast without a subscription. Premium content. A revenue option for podcasts, which has become more popular in the past few years, is the premium content podcast. And this is where podcasters will put a special episode of their show on a platform that users must pay for, like Patreon. And this means that podcasters can secure a revenue stream without having to rely on advertising. Live podcasting. If a podcast has a solid following, it can choose to put on a live podcast. And although the pandemic has put heavy restrictions on this in recent times, many comedy podcasts in particular have made money by selling tickets to audiences at live venues such as theatres or comedy clubs. Do it yourself. The best thing about podcasting is that it's available to anyone with a laptop and a microphone. In fact, according to mypodcastreviews.com, there are over 1.7 million podcasts worldwide. However, Alban Brooke of Buzzsprout points out that 1 million of those haven't released an episode in more than 90 days, and around half of the 1.7 million didn't make more than 10 episodes. So, apparently, if you are willing to simply be consistent, you will be ahead of more than half the pack. Brooke adds, the reason people quit podcasting is the lack of passion and boredom. To combat boredom, Brooke advises to identify the piece of the process that seems boring and outsource it. For example, a common part of the process people often find monotonous is editing, getting people to find your show. Brooke advises if the podcast is about a niche topic, the trick to find listeners is to search for online groups that are tailor-made for that topic. Thousands of social media groups exist for the most niche of subjects. There's a Facebook group dedicated to episodes of Seinfeld, for instance. He says once you have established that group, release snippets of the show which provide value for free. It's not enough to provide a minute-long clip of a show which just teases. Value must be provided. It also urges people not to post whole episodes. Podcasts by nature are not viral material. Clips are, though. He also emphasises the importance of adding a visual component to the audio clip. Called a visual soundbite, people are much more likely to listen if there's an accompanying visual component. Finally, while trying to promote your podcast, it is wiser to choose one social media platform rather than scattering it on every single platform, Brooke suggests. He recommends picking one platform and bring insights from the podcast to that platform. If it's good enough, people will share it or listen to the entire episode. Thanks so much for your time watching. If you like this information, please like, share and comment on the video below and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Press the bell icon to be notified of the latest videos, and for more information and regular updates, please go to the website kalkinemedia.com. This is Sage for Kalkine Media.